Welcome to Running for Real, a global community with a shared love and curiosity for running. Together we reconnect with the reasons why we love to run and discover ways it helps us become better people. Whether it's the quiet moments of a morning run while the rest of the world still sleeps, or befriending the strangers next to you at the start line of a race. We are here to connect with others who see running as the common thread that weaves our lives together. Come join me, Tina Muir, as I talk with people from all walks of life, united by a love of running. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 298 of the Running for Real podcast. We are getting so close to 300. And I do have a special one for you. She's actually not a runner, but she has been very high up on my all-time list. I reached out to her about 4 years ago, the first time, and finally she's come back and said yes, and I'm very excited to tell you who that is in just a few weeks, but you are going to have to wait. But today we have someone who I've also wanted for quite a long time, someone who has really I've known of her for many years. She's been a key player in the changing of the running world, and just in particularly when it comes to steeplechase and just what is possible there. She's been someone to admire. I've always loved her honesty and authenticity. So as you can tell, she would fit in here perfectly. And I'm very excited for us to welcome Genevieve Gregson, aka Genevieve LaCaze, which is what you may have known of her for many years before she got married. Now, Genevieve is a 3-time Olympic finalist, a 2-time World Champs finalist, and an Australian record holder. She has been running for many years now, and today is an episode where we dive into not so much those accolades in true Running for Real style. We are going deeper into the tougher parts of her life as a runner, including the fact that she ruptured her Achilles during the Olympic final on the final barrier in 2021 for the Tokyo Olympics. So we're going to dive into a lot of the struggles she's been through. She is very honest, very authentic, and I think you're going to love her. So let's take a moment to thank one of our sponsors. They'll be right to this episode with Genevieve Gregson. Thank you to Inside Tracker for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast and for supporting me in my journey towards health. Now, I have told you before, I totally geek out over getting my Inside Tracker results. I hate needles. I don't think I can quite explain just how much I get scared. I nearly pass out every time. Yeah, I still love getting my Inside Tracker test done. I'm actually looking at my results page right now, and I've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 Inside Tracker tests done. And I love to see them, and it is really cool to just watch how things change over time. Now, that said, I'm looking at this right now. I'm looking at my results, and I see that I have 7 things that need work. So you can either get at risk, needs work, or optimize. So I am thankful that most of mine are optimized, but I do have 7 that need work. Now, if I look at the first one I see here is lipid group. So lipid group, it tells me I'm in the need work section. It gives me healthy foods to help with my lipid group. So for this, it is Hubbard squash, chia seeds, avocado, acorn squash, raspberries. Those are obviously tailored to whatever lifestyle factors, diet factors you have. I am a vegetarian, therefore that changes my answers. It also gives you a bit more information as to what lipid group or whatever it is actually means, and tells you ways to change it. You can also read the blog about it. You can watch a video about it if you are interested, and it just allows you to compare over time as you can see your results and how they change. Now, I've been using Inside Tracker for many years. I cannot recommend it enough. And if you are feeling off, if something feels off and you can't figure it out, this is the way to do it. And even better than that, you can now upload your own results. If you do have blood work from your doctor, you can upload your results. They will give you those recommendations. They will allow you to check in. It really is a fantastic service. So friends, as a Running for Real listener, you can get 20% off by going to insidetracker.com/Tina. That's insidetracker.com/Tina to go get yourself 20% off. Come join me and geek out over these numbers. Jen, thank you so much for joining me today on the Running for Real podcast. After years, and I don't say this to make you feel bad because I know you get a lot of requests, but after years of wanting to have you on, I am excited to finally welcome you here. So thanks for joining me.
No, thank you so much for having me. I probably didn't realize how difficult it is for two people to find a time on two different time zones, but you've been so
Yes.
flexible, so thanks for that.
No, thank you. And I also should thank my husband for watching my kids again, so that I can do this. But yes, it is surprisingly hard, especially with Australia, to find a time, because either like one person is getting up at like 5 in the morning, or the other is, or you have to do it like one person's doing like 9 p.m. It's a mess. But I'm excited to be here now. You said to me a few minutes ago off air that you're an open book, that you really don't have anything that you don't want to talk about, or anything that is off limits. So I am interested to see, when we say open book, how open of a book you are, because that's really where I think the magic happens, is just that vulnerability and the preparedness to go wherever it goes. So I want to begin with the fact you're a 3-time Olympic finalist, a 2-time World Championship finalist, and an Australian record holder. Now, for someone listening to that, they think, wow, like maybe even they switch off mentally a little bit, like, oh yeah, I'm never going to relate to her. Like everything just fell into place for her. Maybe they know of you and they think she's just living the perfect life. What would you like to remind people before we get any further about hearing those things and the reality?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I can say I wish I lived the perfect life. That would be amazing. But I also am not silly enough to see that I haven't had opportunity fall my way. I've been very lucky in my life to have opportunities that I have. I mean, even just the fact that I grew up in a family of 3 brothers and we're all pretty much a year apart, I think that in itself, allowed me to pursue my dream of running, because I was very active. I had a family that could support my dream of running. In school, I went to a private school that was co-ed and gave me all opportunities to be active, to do sport, and make a big fuss of me when I ran well. So that also, as a kid, that drives your motivation and your passion. So even though to this day I say I am very intrinsically motivated, and my drive for success comes from just me wanting to get the most out of myself and loving the sport, I still had that foundation that created it. And it's, positive feedback as a kid when you're doing something and you're doing it well. People are telling you you're doing it well and you think, okay, well, this is, my calling. I'll keep heading in this direction. So, and from there, I went to college in America on a scholarship to compete at the University of Florida. And I mean, that is, again, another opportunity. But in all these situations that I explain, everything had its challenges. I mean, flying over and living in another country before I really felt like an adult and taking on that was scary. And my parents divorced unexpectedly as soon as I got over there. I, for about 6 months, refused to make a friend or enjoy myself. I was extremely depressed and anxious being in another country. I pretty much just devoted all my time to my studies and running, which, backhandedly ended up being a positive thing, because I started running really well and decided that my happiness was in my running success, and it didn't need to be all gloomy and depressing. It just was what I could make it. And I decided to make friends, really embrace the college experience. And from there, I just gradually got better and better till my 4th year in 2012 was an Olympic year, where I set my sights on making the Olympics. And again, I make it sound like stepping stones that are really naturally happening, but I mean, I had all the typical adversity. Like, I had injuries, I broke up with boyfriends, I was missing my family and sad. There were deaths in the family I wasn't home for. There's been plenty of adversity along my journey, but what I try to say now as a 32-year-old and a 3-time Olympian is you got to use those opportunities to make you better somehow. And in any situation where I face something really, terrible or shocking at the time, for example, rupturing my Achilles at the Olympics, I try to turn it into something that I can gain from it. And in this situation, it's not necessarily making myself a better athlete. It was to start a family, which has been, something, I won't say goal, but it has been something that I've wanted to do from as long as I can remember, is start a family. And I saw a window of opportunity. And I'm not retiring, and I do have so many more goals on the track, but it just comes down to making, lemonade out of lemons. It's all about your mindset. So if people look at my life on Instagram and think, wow, she's living this perfect life, there's no adversity, there's no problems, it's a highlight reel. And I'm not trying to hide that things are hard, but in the last 6 months, I mean, I started a new business with my husband. We bought a house. We moved back to my hometown. So there was a lot of positives, but in saying that, like, we were facing a lot of problems along the way. Like, my husband's mother got really sick and nearly passed away. We've had to move away from, what we love most, and that's our running world. My husband's currently facing like a confusing injury. Like, there's a lot going on that we're balancing, but I'm an open book, but I also don't feel the need to share on my Instagram constant battles that I'm fighting. I do try shine light with my Instagram and have people message me and say they do find inspiration out of my rehab program and what I do. And yeah, it's a balancing act, but I will be the first to say I do think I'm lucky and I have a great life, but don't be confused by the highlight reels.
I really appreciate all that you said there, and that you shared, actual examples of tough things rather than saying we all have ups and downs, and then switching up, because that could, be for anyone listening, that could be anything. But you actually gave some examples there of things that were tough, that things that, as you said, you were lucky and you were fortunate in the opportunities you were presented, but other people might not get the opportunity to go to the US for school like you and I did, but like you said, a death in the family. I had the same thing. It like broke my heart. I still feel that pain when I think about missing, not being there, not making the funeral, all of that. So there are things that, there's always like good things and bad things in every situation. So exactly. I appreciate you sharing that. And you mentioned about kind of being in college and getting a bit, you didn't say the word obsessive, but like pretty much tunnel visioning on your studies and your running.
Yes.
Now, obviously I'm assuming you wouldn't look back and go, oh, I wish I'd gone out and partied. But is there anything that you do kind of think, there's like, for example, for me, I feel like there's a part of me that was like, I really didn't live. It was all about my running, and I wish I'd been a bit more patient and just let it not be trying to force it within college, you know? So any part of that for you?
I definitely have some regrets from college, only because of what I know now. I would probably say I was the opposite in the sense that, yes, the first 6 months I was really sad about being there. I missed my family. I missed my home. I questioned whether I wanted to do running, professionally or even just at a college level, because I kind of felt like, due to the fact that I was good at running, it's made, me have to come over to America, because I also didn't add. My parents said to me, we know you're talented. We know you love running. You should go to America and give it a try, because I was completely against it. I was like, threatening to run away from home. I didn't want to do it. I stopped training. I was like, I don't want to do this. But, they had sense in them to say, she's just young. She's scared. Let's make her try it. And if she hates it, of course, I can come home. And so my parents forced me over there initially. And that's why, I was being a stubborn teenager. I put my walls up and I thought, I'm going to show them how terrible this is and how much it's not good for me and I hate it. And so for those 6 months, I locked myself away from the experience of college and making friends and being in a new foreign city. And it's such a great opportunity. You're pretty much just like, everything's put on a platter for you. You have an academic advisor. You have a trainer, a physio. You have everything you need. All you have to do is turn up. But in my head, I was like, oh, I'm so unlucky. I got sent away from home. I don't want to be here. I don't want to run. And I was just in a bad place for 6 months, almost thinking it was unfair that my brothers got to be at home living a normal life and I had to be overseas. And so that was the wrong mindset. And after I kind of really thought the only thing I know how to do is try study hard and run hard, I did progress in running and got really good, and I actually had a really successful freshman year. I made nationals in the 5K. I completely bombed out in the final, but because my freshman year was so good, and I was kind of happier where I was, I went then the opposite way. Then I started enjoying college too much. I probably didn't look after my body. I didn't sleep as much. I ate poorly. And I lost the professional mindset because I was actually happy and got lost in more the regular student mindset. So I would say my sophomore year, I just feel like I wasted time with my potential. I didn't realize my gift and my talent, and I didn't do anything my sophomore year. I raced and was okay, but I just really feel like that was a plateau when it could have been a step forward. So by my junior year, so my third year at college, I snapped out of it. I think the coach even sat me down and said, we can tell you're not your same self from freshman year. Like, how about you refocus and work out what goals you want? And it was true. Running was the thing that I was most passionate about before anything else. And I was letting it slip away and not really seeing my full potential. So junior year, I got back into business and started running well. And by my senior year, that's when I noticed, hang on, like, I'm really close to making the Olympics. I need to give this even more. And luckily for me, I got there just in time, but I could have easily not. And my whole life would be different. And so I don't sit up at night and think, oh, I regret that. But if you would ask me the question, where do you think, if you could change something, what would it be? I just wouldn't have wasted a whole year of an amazing opportunity that isn't given to everyone, and probably taken it a little more seriously and just seen, where that could have put me after 4 years in college. But yeah, I ended up making the Olympics, which was a catalyst to my career, but, I nearly didn't.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I obviously asked you that question. I put that thought in your head. You said yourself that you don't often sit and think, oh, should have done this. And same with myself. Like, even though there's that part of me that's like, you should have explored and lived a bit more. I very much believe that it worked out the way it did for the reasons it did.
Exactly.
And for you, 3-time Olympic finalist, 2-time world champs finalist, and Australian record holder. Like, when you think about adding that year, like, what, like, for the listeners, they're thinking, well, what more could that be?
Yeah.
Do you let yourself go there of like what you meant by that? Like, is that a medalist instead of a finalist?
Yeah, I think where it wouldn't necessarily be that year in general that I think could have changed things, but what it was is that mindset. So in my sophomore year, and maybe it trickled into other years, not being as serious and taking opportunities as serious as you can, it's obviously going to have a domino effect. And that might be, maybe if I was too focused, I could have got really bad injuries really young, and, I spiraled and left the sport. Like, I'm not saying that, if I had have done things properly, I'd be a medalist. But in my early 20s, so even coming off college and then into my early professional life, again, the regrets that I have, and I'm sure my husband's the same because he's had a really long career like me, again, it just wasn't, we didn't treat our bodies as well as we treat them now. Like, I know how to tinker on that fine line for years and not tip over the edge. I was doing that with my Achilles from 2016 to 2021. Obviously, it eventually tipped over the edge, but I knew it was coming. I was in a situation where it was, don't race the Olympics or race the Olympics. So I chose race the Olympics and my Achilles snapped. But before, in my early 20s, I had so many opportunities that I can look back at and think, you were silly there. You didn't listen to your body there. You didn't, cross-train hard. There's so many errors I made where, there were lost years from 2012 after the Olympics where I could have learnt so much and progressed year by year. I actually almost took a step back for a few years. It wasn't until end of 2015, start of 2016 where I came good again. I had injuries just riddled through those years. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners will understand this, but the most important thing as a runner is consistency before anything else. Like, what's the point of doing 10 weeks at 140K a week and then having 12 weeks off due to injury versus running 90 to 100K a week and never stopping? I made errors where I thought at the time it wasn't silly, but looking back, it was so silly. The amount of injuries I ran through and created a worse injury, the amount of times you think that you have, a tight muscle or a sore tendon and it's actually a broken bone. I've done every error under the sun, and the only thing that I could say would maybe keep me up at night is errors I made in my early 20s, and I wish I could go back and talk to myself, because I do believe that would have allowed my progression as an athlete to be better. I do think I could have run faster than 9:14 in the steeple. I think I nearly did that last year. I do think I could have broken 15 minutes in the 5K. There's so many things I knew I was capable of because at training I showed it, but I didn't give myself the full run up because I was always breaking down with injury. And it's, as an athlete, I'm sure everyone knows, it's just the most frustrating thing that you experience is constantly getting injured.
Thank you to Allbirds for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast and for just making me feel so appreciated and loved and looking after our community too. Allbirds is really trying to change the game. They believe that your carbon footprint for each product that is made or purchased should be as visible as price. They believe that is just as critical of a piece of information that we should know. And that is why Allbirds has the carbon emissions number on every single item they have. It's clear. It shows you, how they're working on things. You see the numbers changing over time, particularly when it comes to the shoes. Their shoes are far lower emissions than any other shoes on the market, and they are continuing to drive those numbers down. And they also have a great range of items for you to go check out, be it if you want running clothes or lifestyle clothes. And I'm actually surprised how many Allbirds items I see around. I have lots of different types of shoes from them, but I want to tell you about a few of the options today. So there's the running shoes. There is another pair of running shoes. I cannot tell you about it just yet, but there is a pair coming out this month, which is the pair I wore in Boston. I wore in Maui. I've been wearing for my workouts, but I will tell you more about that when I'm allowed to. However, for now, you can go check out the Tree Dashers 2, which can handle a regular run, but they are not really designed. They're kind of designed for every day plus a run. So if you're going on a short trip, you can easily add them in. I also have a lot of the other casual pairs of shoes that I wear every day. They are incredibly comfortable, and they don't wear through very often. That's one thing I've really enjoyed about them, is that they're not, you don't see them, you don't poke a hole in the top or you don't wear down the bottom. They really are made to last, and they're made of materials that are good for the planet, like wool. And the midsole is made of sugarcane, by the way. So they have these proprietary materials that they use to really use plant-based materials like castor bean oil that emits less carbon than petroleum foam, all kinds of things, recycled laces. There's a lot that goes into this. So you can go to allbirds.com to go check out more and let them know I sent you. Yeah, well, especially once you get yourself in like a cycle as well. And as you said, something like your Achilles or plantar fasciitis or something tendon related, once you get yourself in that circle of it, just is so hard to get out of it, especially when you have something you're working towards. So thank you for sharing that. And I want to dive into the, you mentioned about your Achilles rupturing, snapping, which I can't imagine there's much worse of an injury than just even the idea of it is like terrifying, right? And so having that happen on the world stage during the Olympics, I read afterwards that you in a post you did a few days later, and I like to do this because we write things when we're in the emotion, and sometimes we can be reactive, sometimes we can be very emotional, but time allows us to look back on it differently. And I'm curious, it's not been a year yet, but you mentioned in your post afterwards that you felt like this was the opportunity to prove yourself. Obviously that relates to some of the things you just mentioned there a few minutes ago, but how do you reflect back on that now? The fact that your Achilles ruptured during the Olympics and that you felt you had to prove yourself. Like, do you still feel that way?
Yeah, it is a hard one. And like you said, time makes, you look back from every angle, and I've gone through phases. There's been times where, early on, I was just really upset and frustrated for that reason. I just knew I didn't really ever show the potential I believe I was capable of at the Olympics. And the reason why I say that is because with the whole injury thing, like 2016 at Rio, I did the 5K and the steeplechase, and I made 2 finals. And that was the first time I'd made a final, and everything, like every time I touched the track, I did a PB, and it was like amazing, fairy tale, everything working out. And so 2016 was like, yes, in my career, that's where I was at. And I think that I was able to show that throughout the whole year. I think I PB'd 16 times, and every time I came out, I was better and better. And like, you don't ever look back on a season like that and think where you could have been better, because I truly believe everything I did that year was where I was at, and I was showing where I was at. But since then, like 2017, when I was coming off my best year yet, injury at the start of the year ruptured my plantar. Rushed back, did really crazy cross training because I had that, desire to get back to where I just was. I had so much drive and motivation after 2016. I ended up getting into really good shape and then getting a stress fracture in my foot right before World Champs. But I was like, I still have 12 weeks. I'll cross train for 6 weeks and then run for 6 weeks and I'll be fine. And so I get to World Champs and I make the final, and it's great, but then I come 12th in the final because really at the end of the day, I didn't have enough running in my legs. I'd cross-train most of the time. 2018, that same stress fracture came back. Com Games was a bit of a fail. I came 5th, but in a race that I truly believe I could have medaled in. And I just sit there saying to myself, this is because you got injured again, like how frustrating. And then started 2019, I tore my Achilles and had 4 months off. And luckily Doha World Champs was, not till end of September, start of October. So I had time to, again, rush, cross-train, do everything right and get into good enough shape to, again, make the finals at World Champs in 2019. But then I came 10th. And it's like 10th was great in the context, but it's not my potential. It's just good for the context I was in. I didn't have much time under my belt. I'd cross-train for most of it. I'd rush to get to the start line, and I made the final, which is great, and then I came 10th. But I was always just like getting results that were good for the situation. But if you look back at my career, 10 years later, I don't think I fulfilled my potential in any of those years, because I know what I'm capable of. And it may only be me and my husband and my coach that know my potential, but as an athlete, it's so frustrating to feel like you never really were able to show what you thought you could do. So come Tokyo, it was the first time in my career in my professional career, where I'd had 2 years of health, as in 2 years of uninterrupted training, where the only days that I would have taken as a break were chosen trying to be responsible, but no injury, no hiccups. Like, obviously I was managing my Achilles, but I'd gotten so good at that. I'd raced 2 steeples back to back a month out from Tokyo, where I did the Stockholm Diamond League and ran like 9:23. Then a few days later went to Monaco and ran 9:17 while hurdling a girl that fell over. And I just thought, I'm in crazy shape. Like, this is my chance to show, myself as well, but everyone else what I'm capable of. And I did think I could get like top 5, top 6. But then I had a whole season after that where I was going to go to pre-classic. I was going to go back to Europe and chase my Australian record. And so you build this up over time, especially in an Olympic year, of positive energy, but also motivation and desire and desperation. So when you're laying there in the pit after a ruptured Achilles, which any athlete or a normal person in the world knows is potentially career-ending, all those thoughts over the last however long, for me it was like 5-6 years, just disappeared. And it was kind of like, what was all of that for? And it was, I think that's where I really struggled. It was not poor me, it was more just what a waste of time and effort and goal chasing and all of that. And obviously that's, me being dramatic, because it is nothing's a waste of time. I've loved the journey, but it did take me weeks and months to stop going over what I could have done differently to avoid that outcome. How could have I avoided this? What could have changed? But the more and more retrospect and just time that I've had to go over, it was inevitable. I was on borrowed time, and that's what so many professional athletes work out later, is there wasn't one thing I did wrong to rupture my Achilles and have that all come crashing down. It was a series of things that weren't wrong at the time but led to my body not being able to back up. And I now, because I'm 34 weeks pregnant, don't get sad at all because there's something amazing that's come out of this. But yeah, before I fell pregnant, I really, would lay up at night and think, gosh, this could all be so different. Like, is this how it ends? Is this what my career kind of falls on as a DNF at the Olympic Games? But they're just mental battles, and you've got to learn to deal with them in different ways. And for me, that was starting a family. And I can confidently say I don't regret anything. I'm glad I ruptured my Achilles now because, I'll meet my baby boy and, things will feel like they were meant to go this way.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for your vulnerability and sharing there. And it's hard to hear, but I bet it's also comforting to a lot of people, especially as you know, there's that negative, not only people who you might come into contact with, maybe it's just family, friends, or people that don't know the sport that well, who have that negative association with, like, you're just always injured. Maybe you're just not meant to do this,
Exactly.
and that is a lot. But then you then are acutely aware of your own, that like they're thinking that about you and you're questioning it yourself. And there's that whole stigma that I know people struggle with. So I think they're going to really appreciate hearing you sharing that.
Yeah.
And, feeling like you never make it to the start line to do what you can do, or if maybe you do make it to the start line and it comes up during the race. But
yeah. And what people probably don't realize is professional athletes don't, well, a lot of them hide injuries, but they don't look at injuries as poor me, I'm unlucky. Most professional athletes think I'm an idiot, like I got injured again. How did I do that? They're already blaming it on themselves. They know they made an error somewhere. They didn't listen to their body. And I think the stigma or the stereotypical thought process for anyone from the outside looking in is, maybe they're having a bit of a pity party and thinking they're unlucky. But the way we're wired is we're blaming ourselves immediately. As soon as we get an injury, we're angry because...
And you want like one thing for it to be, it was that day.
Yeah, exactly. You want to try to work out, okay, what's the one thing I did wrong that caused this? And it's never one thing, of course.
Yeah.
But it's not us, wanting people to think, oh, you're so unlucky. Like, I didn't accidentally rupture my Achilles. There was a whole lead into that. Like, that was happening. Whether it was the last water barrier or the first, I'm just thankful I got to run the heat and make it nearly all the way to the finish line. It was literally the last one. But, what if I got through that last water barrier, crossed the line, obviously not running the result that I thought I was capable of because I was running on one foot. I was in that much pain. And then going off to America and running pre-classic and doing it there. Like, it's just, it was always going to happen. It's inevitable. It's just, the life of a professional athlete or any athlete, your body does have to give way. You're always pushing it to the limits, and it's never one thing, and you always blame yourself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that I know that all too well from my past as well, but it's it's just good for people listening to hear it because they know it, and it is easy, as you said, to look at other people when they're injured and just feel heartbroken for them, but think, yeah, totally like, oh, it just happens. We know that this happens, but when you're in it yourself, it feels like it is all on you. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And as this happened at the Olympics, how did you struggle with continuing to be supportive to teammates, to friends that you have in the running space when you were going through such a devastating moment? Or because you knew this was coming, were you able to quickly, you obviously didn't want it to happen at the Olympics, but were you able to switch that off and still be out there?
Yeah, I mean, for the first few days, well, when I did it, it was a Wednesday night. I wouldn't have spoken to anyone that night except for my husband and the doctors. So I would have just probably cried in my bed all night in the village. But when I woke up Thursday, I actually, again, never left my room on Thursday, but not because, I didn't want to see anything or experience anything. I watched the whole day on my laptop. I was still messaging people and saying good luck or responding to some people that were, reaching out to me. And I had plenty of teammates come see me in my room. I never, and my husband actually says this about me, I'm not someone that once something bad happens to you in the sport, whether it's an injury or a bad race or whatever, I'm not someone that needs to then, silence Instagram feeds and remove themselves from that world. I have to stay in it because I genuinely love it and I follow the sport and I love watching races and checking results and messaging teammates even right now. Like all my teammates are in Flagstaff right now preparing for Stanford or Sound Running or some big race that's coming up to try qualify for world champs.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't sting that I'm not out there doing that, especially because I'm injured. And it never has. And I know some people are very different. They're like, when they're hurt, they need to just almost delete the Instagram app and stay out of social media for a while because they need to just, heal themselves. But I heal from continuing to watch the sport and continuing to see people do well. Do I wish I was out there? Of course. Like, I'm never going to say, oh, no, it doesn't affect me. Like, I wish I was out on these training camps with my teammates. I wish I could race. I wish I could continue to try break my own Australian record, but I just don't think it helps me trying to block it all out because for me, that's just pushing it aside and eventually I'll still want to come back to it and see it all. So I face it, I face the music straight away. And my husband laughs at me because he thinks I'm sick. When I have a bad race, I immediately go home and I watch it over and over again. Or I listen to the post-race interview of the winner talk about how they felt in the race. And he's like, what are you doing? It's like, you're just like reopening a wound over and over again. And I'm like, no, it's my way of accepting a bad race or accepting an injury and kind of like living through it so that it isn't an old scar that can be reopened again. And I mean, I've watched my Achilles snap over and over again, but not because I want to relive that moment. I just kind of want to see, okay, was I limping in the race? Did I look like I was favoring one side? How was I going? Like, was I running well? And it's all just a mechanism of dealing with it. And I can still be supportive for other people and follow the sport while I'm sidelined indefinitely.
Thank you to Athletic Greens for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast and for keeping our community working well, having this foundational nutrition, comprehensive daily nutrition that is just made as simple as one scoop in some water is how I start my day every day. And now we are traveling a lot for the summer for some of us, winter for others, but this tends to be a time of year that we travel. It is made from the highest quality ingredients in accordance with the strictest standards, and it is obsessively improved based on the latest science. They will show you the full ingredient list, but it contains 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food source ingredients, which gives you the antioxidant equivalent of 12 servings of fruits and vegetable in every scoop, which is what I like to begin my day with. And it just gives me that insurance policy that I am taking care of my body, regardless of what I end up eating that day. It is also NSF Sport certified, and it's essentially like combining all your supplements and other health products in one. So you have that one thing to take every day. There's a travel packet. There's plenty of those that you can take with you. And it's better than taking pills. Who likes taking pills? I definitely don't. So this has been optimized for athletes, for life-leets, everyone in between. It doesn't matter what your diet is. This is going to work well for you. So friends, as a Running for Real listener and a friend of mine, you can get a 1-year free supply of vitamin D and some free travel packs by going to athleticgreens.com/Tina. That's athleticgreens.com/Tina. Go check it out. Go see what everyone else is talking about. And you're going to love it. I know I do. When you were rewatching as you said, it happening, looking at yourself, how do you differentiate that between what you were saying earlier of, trying to figure out the one thing that you did wrong or, just looking into it too much as to what could it have been? How is that different to what you just shared there?
So I think also when you go through something like I did in the final, you also forget everything. Like I look back and people are like, talk us through what you were feeling on the start line. Talk us through how you were running, how you were racing. I can't even really describe it probably accurately because it is a blur. It's all so I go back and watch the race more to try remember, what it was like in that experience, because I feel like I can remember every other race. I can remember all my other Olympics, but that, I think trauma allows you to probably as a defense mechanism black out things. And I really don't remember much, but if I'm ever down or thinking, oh, it's a shame how it all ended, that's different. That's looking back at the month leading into the Olympics and thinking, okay, here's all the series of things that weren't on your side, and that's why it isn't one thing. You've been on borrowed time for your Achilles since 2016. You've known that maxing out your mileage is not the smartest thing. You always have to include cross training. You know that you can't run too many hills. You can't run on uneven surfaces. And I did run 2 races back to back in spikes a month out. And, you could say that was a mistake, but at the same time, it gave me so much confidence. So I don't regret doing that. It made me feel like, oh my gosh, I'm in such good shape. The only thing that gives me peace is if it wasn't the Olympic Games, I wouldn't have raced that week, when I had a heat and final. If that was, February in Australia, I would have said to my coach, hey, my Achilles is a little flared up. Let's take a week. I might just hop in the pool. But I didn't have that option. I sat down with the medical team and we did discuss every option. Like, should we numb it? Should we cortisone it? Should we do all these things? And in the end, we decided they were all too risky and that I might rupture my Achilles if we do that, and that we should just, try get it in the best place possible for the race. So that's what helps me deal with it. Every decision made was made like right for that specific moment. So you can't have regret when you can honestly say, I wasn't silly. I was doing everything I could then and there.
And I think that's such a good lesson for us for life in general. We tend to be so critical. I mean, even thinking back to races that we've all done where you look back, a few hours, a few days later, oh, if I could have just shaved a few seconds here, or I could have just done this there. But you did. You did the best that you could in that moment. And maybe there was a few seconds you could have done, but in that moment, you felt like there was no more. And so
and you were trying your hardest
that's really
at that moment. Yeah. And hindsight is one of the most amazing things in the world, but it also can confuse you because in hindsight, you've learned all the lessons that you needed to learn back in time. So, I still do that. I'm always like in a race, I said, oh, if I had have, surged into that barrier faster, I would have broken, I would have run faster than 9:17, or I wouldn't have been behind that girl that fell over. But you're not in the moment. You're making all your like instinctual, decisions at that moment, and you're doing everything you can, and you can't live in regret because, then we would all hope to be fortune tellers and try to change things as they were before they came.
Such a good message. So you mentioned there about all the things you've learned. You had this Achilles rupture, you had the surgery, and then you let that heal, and then you had the surgery on the other Achilles. Talk about what you've learned from the recovery process and having it that way, be almost like you had the first one, and then you knew you were going to have to do this all over again. Like, talk about your mindset as you went through the recovery.
I'd say that the only hard part about the last, 6-7 months was facing the first surgery, the rupture. And what I'm sure people know by now, but what a lot of people didn't realize is the Achilles that I ruptured was my good Achilles. It actually had no problems. It was the leg that you rely on when you're limping because the other one's so bad. I had tendinopathy and Haglund's and bursitis and everything in my left Achilles most of my career. And that was what caused, the compensating the whole time. I ended up just putting too much weight through my right good leg that eventually that tendon just got overstressed and snapped. So the hard part was kind of thinking, all right, I've just gone and snapped an Achilles that didn't even need work before this injury. We should have just addressed the Achilles that needed the work and this wouldn't have been, a problem. So that rehab was hard. It was because my left Achilles, like I said, it's not great. It's sore all the time. It took months to go back to being pain-free when I wasn't even moving. I was in a boot and crutches. That rehab was slow, and it was like baby steps for months and months. But I still remember my strength and conditioning coach and my physio saying, okay, next week we're going to try do some running. Like, we're going to start doing small strides. And I remember thinking they were crazy because to me, my legs still looked like a stick. It had no muscle definition. And like in your head, you're imagining the tendon just tied together at both ends. And you're like, how can it withstand any running? But, you know, when you start jogging again, it's like riding a bike. You start feeling more and more yourself. And I got up to an hour a day of running with my ruptured Achilles. But again, the thing that was holding me back was how sore my left still was, you know, that chronic overuse injury from years. And that wasn't hard to overcome because I knew how badly it needed the work. It needed the operation. So getting that operation was more just like ticking a box. It's like, this is my to-do list and it's needed to be done, but we just had to get my right in a really good place so that it felt confident to once again be my stabilizing leg. So I'm now about 12 weeks post that second surgery, and the left, like the surgery was much more minimal than repairing a tendon that's ruptured, but it's still sore. It still flares up if I do too much, but my right ruptured Achilles is so strong. It feels great. You know, I won't ever be a power athlete or I won't go bounding and doing plyometrics, but it feels strong enough to return to distance running again. And so it kind of works well with having this pregnancy at the stage it is, because I still have 6 weeks or so for that. And then, you know, there's going to be a birth and then there'll be some layover phase after birth. I think it'll be the perfect amount of time to get both my Achilles in a place where they are ready to start a running build up again, because I'm continuously putting strength in them every day, doing little exercises, strengthening my hips and my glutes and my hamstrings and quads. So we're kind of just building a foundation now so that when I can run and I am in the clear from giving birth and surgery stages, I'll be ready to go. So it's all worked out kind of in a nice little package.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'd love for us to then go on to pregnancy. You know, your body has been your job for many years now. It's been what gave you all these opportunities. How has pregnancy, you know, you're 34 weeks, as you said, at this point, so you're well into it. Your body has changed a lot. How has this changed the way you view it and yourself as a human being?
Yeah, I think I've always wanted to have kids, and I also, believe it or not, also always wanted to be pregnant. I wanted to experience the growing belly and what you see on the movies and how they say that you get a glow, but it's not all like that. I can't say that I've, you know, thought it's an amazing experience for the last 34 weeks, but I have really enjoyed it. I would say when anyone asks me, I'd say the only thing that's been really hard, and it just makes me think maybe next time I'll enjoy it more, is I haven't really been able to do what I love, which is running throughout it. You know, I have so many friends coincidentally that fell pregnant after Tokyo that have been able to run right up until 34, 35 weeks, slowly, but, you know, they can still go out for a trot and get a good sweat on and feel like themselves, even though their body is forever changing. Whereas I had 2 surgeries. I was in a boot for probably about 15 weeks of all of that. I was on crutches and my body was changing, and you're experiencing all the hormonal imbalances and difficulties with things feeling different, or you're feeling nauseous. And I just wish I could have at least had my constant of running, and that all would have been a little easier. But I've been doing hours and hours of cross training, obviously low intensity, but hours on the bike, hours in the pool, hours on the elliptical. And I just think that in itself is hard enough mentally. But then when you pair it with pregnancy, it has kind of been like a more challenging period than I thought it would have had to be. So I think for my next time I fall pregnant, because I would like to have more than one baby, I will enjoy it more because I will run. I will just enjoy moving out the door so easily than sitting in a garage staring at a wall on a bike or something. So that would be my only knock on this pregnancy.
Have you thought about, I mean, this is obviously years down the road, but have you thought about what do you think, you know, some people can't run. They might get like 12, 15, 18 weeks and then their body says no. Do you think you would be able to handle that okay, knowing that you do have that mindset of I can't wait for it? Or do you think what you've gone through this time would allow you to pivot and be like, okay, this is the situation, I've learned to respect my body and that's what it needs?
Yeah, and I think I would, because one thing I have noticed is I've gone from an athlete mindset where you're probably way harder on yourself. Like in previous phases where I'm injured and I'm cross training, like there's almost no days off. I'm going hell for leather every day. I'm getting in my training. I write it out each week and I tick it off as it comes. Obviously if I start to feel chronically fatigued, I'll rest or eat more or, fuel my body and give it a bit of a break to go hard again. But it's a totally different mindset. You're like a racehorse. You're a robot. There's no letting up. It's just you and cross training and hard work and you've got a goal. But when you're a mother and you've got something else growing inside you, your whole mindset changes. I'm so much easier on myself now. And that took adjusting, because part of you wants to say, oh, you're just being weak. You're not tired. You're just being lazy. But I've had to adjust my mindset to, no, you are growing a child now. You're not training for the Olympics. You are trying to maintain fitness, but the priority is the health of the baby. So I do take days off all the time. I will sleep in. I will take naps. I will eat a little more if I'm feeling like, low on energy. And I think if I came around to another pregnancy where I'd set a goal to run through it, and if I couldn't or it felt uncomfortable, my body just wasn't managing it, I think now with my mindset, it would be easier for me to say, okay, unfortunately, that's not the way this plan's going and we'll have to get back on the bike or back in the pool and back on the elliptical. And it's just changing that mindset from being a professional athlete to now being, a mother first and then a professional athlete.
Yeah. How have you noticed, you said you take naps, you take days off, you rest as needed. What have you noticed about that in terms of being committed to training, but maybe recognizing that it's okay to rest? Has there been any insight in terms of that, or has that been tough mentally to rest?
Yeah, at first I'd say yes. It was really hard. And, I probably was getting people like my mum and my grandma always saying, you're doing too much, you need to slow down. Because, back in their day, it would have been very frowned upon to be active during pregnancy. But, I also made sure I did my research and I spoke to the right people and I got obstetrician. I went in and saw an obstetrician and got her advice. And there is a limit, obviously, but you can be active. It's very healthy and very natural. But for me, it was hard to take those rests early on. But now I see it as, and again, I did this as an athlete, the main thing you have to do when you're cross-training is make it sustainable, because mentally it's already hard enough. Like, that the next, if you've got a stress injury or a bad tendon or a torn muscle, that you've got X amount of time before you're allowed to run again. And it's hard. It's like, this is mentally challenging. So you've got to make programs sustainable, and that sometimes will require rest days or will require a day where you treat yourself and you, go out and have a lovely meal every now and then. There's things you do have to add in to make, we aren't robots. So you've got to make it sustainable so that you don't quit or that you don't contemplate quitting or your motivation doesn't drop. And I think for me, since I've been injured since August and, started those surgeries and then got pregnant, there was no timeline. It was just, you're out for a really long time. We can't tell you how long it's going to be. It might be a year. It might be more than a year. It could maybe be a little less than a year. But I had to buckle in for a really long road. So for me, adding in those rest days when I want them or napping when I feel like I need them has just allowed me to string this period so much longer than I probably would have ever been able to. As much as I like to say I'm very committed to what I do and I'm very disciplined and determined, everyone has normal human feelings and emotions, and you get over it. Like, I had a few weeks ago, I said to my husband, I'm like, you know what? I need a minute. Like, I can't wake up tomorrow and elliptical for 90 minutes. I need that day off, and I had the day off. But then the next day I woke up and I was like, I'm not ready yet. And I ended up taking 3 or 4 days of absolutely nothing, sleeping in, napping, eating a little more, because I was zapped just mentally. I was like, I don't want to do it. And it wasn't even about the baby then. I just personally was over it. I was like, I've been doing this since September. I don't want to do it right now. And after those 3 or 4 days, that was all I needed. I got straight back into my routine after that and enjoyed it again. Like, I started loving my elliptical, loving my bike. And I think people need to realize sometimes when they're in an injury phase, it's already hard enough dealing with the injury you have and not being able to do what you love. So don't make cross training miserable. And, this routine that's so hard to face every week in and week out, because you'll end up just being low in motivation and probably not even training that well, because, if your body doesn't want to do it, you can't force it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's what I've learned over such a long period of time. It's be easy on yourself and make those days a priority, because it allows you to stay so much more motivated for a way longer period of time.
It's so interesting you mentioned that, because earlier on I wrote a note to myself about you when you said you were cross-training like a crazy person, I think you said. Yeah. And it made me think, I remember doing the same thing, like going into the pool and just like killing myself. Yeah. But how much of that is actually for the training, and how much of it is just like almost trying to prove to yourself that you're tough enough, that you don't need to, I don't need rest days, and I'm going to get back out there. You just see, like, it's all, we mentioned about proving yourself, but literally proving to yourself. I wonder how much of cross training is that. And same as what you said, I remember going through phases where I hated it. I would wake up and be like, oh my God, I do this, but like, you just did it anyway. And but then that satisfaction of like, well, look at me now, look how tough I am now, kind of keeps you in the cycle. So I love that you've broken out of that and listened to your body.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you're a professional athlete, you go through those. Oh my gosh, I'm the same. I've turned up to a pool and I'm staring at the pool and I was like, are you really doing this? Like, this is happening right now. And you get through it and you push yourself so hard. And even afterwards, you're satisfied, but you're like, wow, I don't even know how I did that. Like, I'm just cooked. But then you have those races like I did at World Champs 2019, where I was just so proud of myself because I'd had 4 months of just relentless cross training. And I got to the start line and I ran well and I made the final, and it was all worth it. Like, I didn't regret a single second. But you also have to take the other side. And my husband and I always say this to each other. If you're dreading it and you're looking at a bike or a pool or an elliptical and you're saying, I just don't know if I can do this today. Like, I don't think I have it in me. You're not a weak person. Like, if you're training this hard, you're not weak. So don't doubt yourself. It means you need a rest. You genuinely need to not hop on the cross trainer that day, take a day, or do it hours later when you might have wrapped your head around it. But we can't ever. I think I've spent too much time in my professional career thinking I was taking a weak option or thinking I wasn't motivated and just being lazy, but it's never that. Or I already know enough about myself, and it's that I'm very motivated. I'm very intrinsically passionate about chasing my goals. So if there's ever a time where I don't think I can do something, it means my body is crying out saying, take a day, take a minute. You need this.
So true. Thank you so much. Now, to wrap up here, for anyone, well, maybe not someone listening, but there's going to be people out there after you have your baby, whether you have another one afterwards and then come back, or whether you come back and then go off again. What would you like to say to anyone who, you are going to get written off? You are going to get people saying, well, you're 32, by the time baby's done, that's 34. What would you like to say right there about that?
I mean, I've spent most of my career of people saying different situations have written me off. I mean, it sounds hilarious now, but I remember even my injury in 2017 where I had back-to-back stress fractures and Com Games was a flop. I had people come up to me and say, oh, have you considered retiring and starting a family? And I think I was like 29 or something, which, yeah, maybe to them seemed old. But I've always done well in those situations because I hate people trying to dictate how my life's going to go. Even rupturing my Achilles, maybe another version of me would have thought, okay, Genevieve, your body's crying out. How about we call it a day? That's a great career. Like, you can hang your hat on 3 Olympic finals. You are 32. there's so many things you could do with your life now. Let's go explore. But it was the fact that it wasn't on my terms, that I'd have to step away from the track. I hate that. I want to, and it might be a fairy tale and never happen, but I want to one day wake up and say, okay, I'm ready now to step away. You know, what an adventure, what a career. I'm so proud of myself, but I'm ready. I'm never going to walk away when I rupture my Achilles or someone tells me I'm too old, or, you know, I've had 2 kids and haven't made a comeback yet. So it's just like, oh, I'll just slip away into the distance and hope no one notices. Like, I have to have it on my terms. I have to do it how I want to do it. And to anyone that thinks a 32-year-old, nearly 33, with a baby on the way and 2 Achilles surgeries, there's absolutely no way she'll come back. I'll be trying. I can't promise that I'll make it back, and like, I'm well aware of that. But I will be pretty much, after this baby, I'm going to give my body a rest, in the sense that I'm not going to try bang out 2 kids and then see how I go. I think I'll have this baby and really give road running a good go. I'll never step away from the track completely, but I think I really want to focus on longer stuff, half marathon, full marathon, like a marathon.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I know I'm a good road runner, as long as these injuries haven't knocked me around too much, or the baby doesn't knock me around too much. I do think I can make a pretty good comeback, and I will set my sights on Paris Olympics. And, you know, if somewhere between now and then I realize my body's just not up for it, or I love being a mother and that's all I want to do, like, I will make changes. I'm not that stubborn. But for me now, I'm more motivated and confident than ever that by the end of this year, I'll be back on the roads racing, and I'll use 2023 as a period to try qualify for the Olympics. And hopefully by 2024, I'm in a place where I can run a good marathon.
Love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Where can people go to follow along with your journey?
I'm usually pretty good on my Instagram, just because I'm one of those people that love to video everything and anything. So on Instagram, my handle's jen_LaCaze. It's my maiden name. And yeah, if you follow that, you'll definitely get a good insight into everything I'm doing. Don't be alarmed though, it is a highlight reel. I'm not going to tell you about all my terrible days that come along here and there, but I'm usually good at keeping everyone updated with where I'm at with my
you definitely are.
journey. Yeah,
thank you so much. Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for your vulnerability and honesty. Appreciate you, and best of luck with the birth.
Thank you so much, Tina. It was such a pleasure being on here. I really appreciate it.
Hi friends, just a quick message to say a big thank you to the Running for Real team. While I may be the face of Running for Real and the voice behind the podcast, there are a group of people who are working tirelessly to provide everything that runners could need within our community, to make our community stronger, better, and evolve and grow and learn from one another. We are working really hard to make Running for Real the place we believe it can be within our community. I just want to take a moment to thank everyone on our team. That is Victoria, Stacy, Sandy, Sally, Maria, Kelsey, Kat, Jeremy, and Erica. I appreciate each and every one of you and the hard work that you put in. Now let's get back to the show. I really appreciated that conversation. I loved her honesty and her authenticity in being able to just say things for how they were, how tough they were, and what she's learned along the way. She's obviously a competitor. She's obviously someone who loves the sport, but there's so much more to any story in it. As she said, her Instagram is a highlight reel. So I really love when people are willing, definitely in the pro world, to open up and share about things that are tough for them. And by the time you hear this, maybe she will have had a baby, maybe any day now. But wishing her lots of luck, and I look forward to following along in her return to running. It's going to be really cool to see what happens. Okay, so you can find links to everything we talked about today in the show notes by going to runningforreal.com/episode 298. And you can also find links to our sponsors who allow this podcast to continue, allow me to get the guests that we do. And without them, Running for Real wouldn't really be able to be anything more than just a social media account. So thank you so much to our sponsors. Inside Tracker, you can get 20% off. I just recently had my test done. I shared a little bit about that in the ad today. You can get 20% off by going to insidetracker.com/Tina. You can check out more information, and it really is a great place to go. And remember what I said, you can actually upload your own results now and they will analyze it. I also want to thank Allbirds for their partnership with me, and I am really enjoying working alongside them. Don't have a coupon code. They don't really feel the need to do that yet. We just are letting you get to explore by yourself. So be sure to go to Allbirds. That's ALLBIRDS, allbirds.com, and go check it out. And if you go get something, make sure you say it came from me. And finally, thank you to Athletic Greens for keeping me healthy and happy wherever I go, whether I am traveling, whether I am home. I drink my Athletic Greens every morning, and it is just, I can't imagine it not being a part of my routine. And every single person who tries it gets hooked on it. I get so many messages from people saying, I was hesitant, I tried Athletic Greens, and oh my God, I love it. So you can go to athleticgreens.com/Tina, and that will get you a 1-year free supply of vitamin D plus some free travel packs. So go check that out. And friends, I will have another together run for you on Monday, and then another running reunion on Wednesday, and then one of these again next Friday. We got a lot of good stuff coming for you. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you next week.